Much has been made of William arriving at St Andrews to read history of art and switching to geography. It's not as dramatic as it sounds, and according to Colin Vincent, a significant number of people do the same thing. William gave history of art as his degree choice on the UCAS entry form, but he was always going to study geography alongside it for the first 2 years. He also did social anthropology and moral philosophy and briefly a bit of Arabic culture. All that happened is he decided to take geography through to honors level instead of the other subject. Colin was the one who helped him reach that decision. We had discussions and he wrote down the pros and cons of the two subjects. It was all to do with what he was finding stimulating and interesting. I think he had surprised himself with his ability to cope with the quantitative, mathematical side of geography. He had a view he couldn't do it. His father had been concerned that, like him, he didn't have a quantitative brain. While not unusual or surprising in itself, the switch did cause the odd wry smile around the academic community. The campus had been marginally rearranged before William's arrival. The art history department, which had been fragmented in buildings all over the town, was brought under one roof in what had been the principal's house. It was a grand building on the Scores, the most prestigious address in the town, overlooking the sea, and was a 100-yard walk for William in the mornings from his hall of residence. The incoming principal, Dr. Brian Lang, who arrived at the same time as William, took a modest modern house in the town. He conveniently took the view that modern principals didn't need to live in a house with 37 rooms and have man-servants, says Niall Scott, tongue firmly in cheek. That allowed us to put all of art history in one place, which for academic as well as security reasons was better. John Walden was William's geography tutor throughout the 4 years and in his final year, supervised 2 big pieces of independent work, a review essay and a 10,000-word dissertation. The academic stuff was fine, he says. He was a perfectly capable student, no different from any other students in the cohort. What fascinated him about William was the security circus. You could walk around the town and not know it was happening, but then you got a little peek and realized it was a big operation. I had to discuss all the details of field trips with his PPOs, how many in the class, where we were going and the timings. The PPOs kept a very low profile but wanted to know everything. In the first year the geography department was near the Scores, but the lectures were down on the North Haw in the Purdy building, on the other side of town, so William had a little commute. They eventually got bored with him having to walk and somebody bought him a pushbike, and thereafter, one PPO would stand in the halls of residence, put him on his bike, send him off down the road, where there was a black car with darkened windows and another PPO waiting to see him arrive safely on the North Haw. Yes, he's arrived, they would radio. Some terrorist could have come along and shot the wheels off his bike, so in that sense it was very relaxed, but there were a lot of people one way or another working on the operation. Brendan says, he always had an eye out for the press and would hang about after class after all the other students had gone. The first time he asked me if I minded and he said it was in case anyone was waiting outside. I remember asking him if he was going to take part in Raisin Monday, the day when students go bonkers and drink copiously, dress up, have foam fights in the quad and do silly things. He said no, because he was just too vulnerable if he did anything silly and the press got hold of it. Raisin Monday is an age-old tradition at St Andrews. Older students have always taken first years, Bayantines, under their wing and shown them the ropes. They are called academic parents, and on Raisin Monday their children express their gratitude by giving them a pound of raisins, deemed as something of a luxury in the days when each student went up to the university with a sack of oatmeal and a barrel of salt herring to see them through the term. Nowadays, the raisins are more likely to be in liquid form, while in return, the parents give their children formal receipts for the gift. These can be written on anything from a ladder to a chicken, the more awkward or comical the better, which the children have to carry around with them for the rest of the day. Otherwise, says Brendan, I don't think his style was cramped too much. St Andrews was the best place he could have come to. It was small, no one made a fuss of him, people were protective. Peter says, "My feeling in the first year was that he hadn't quite clicked that this was going to be the freest moment of his whole life." William was a master at keeping his feelings hidden. He had been doing it since he was a child, and the only person in the world who knew the turmoil that bubbled beneath the surface was Harry, and vice versa. He and Harry, so different in so many ways, and like most siblings not especially close as small children, now clung to one another, their relationship cemented by mutual need. In Tesco's, people treated him as a normal customer. I saw him in a queue for the checkout once and an elderly lady from the town start chatting to him. He dealt with it very well. He wasn't so friendly, she was encouraged to come back for more, but he was not off-putting. But he was always aware that someone from the news of the world could be lurking with a lens. When he walked about the town, he pulled his baseball cap down low and wrapped an Aston Villa scarf round his face, and you didn't really notice him. The odd paparazzo, of course, lurked. Despite all the agreements, there were still a few hanging around, hoping for a shot of him with a girl or doing something compromising that could be deemed to be in the public interest. One that appeared in several of the tabloids was certainly not in the public interest and, on the face of it, was harmless. It was a shot of him in the street laden with Tesco plastic shopping bags full of groceries. William was incensed and rang Colleen in his father's office. "Why are these photographers following me?" he was saying. "They shouldn't be, you've got to stop it." He assumed we could keep the cordon around them, and we couldn't, it wasn't sustainable. In the PCC code it said up to the age of 18, but post-18 it was only goodwill, and it was much harder to control the media then. He kicked up a real stink about it, and it was really quite hard. He couldn't understand why the media would want these pictures and why it would happen. She wonders whether the St. James's Palace press office did both boys a bit of a disservice after their mother died, whether they went too far in their determination to protect them. If you look back at some of the PCC wording, although it applies to everyone, it was skewed to protect those boys. I think we got carried away with it, kept it going too long, and the boys got used to it. Anyone would. So when they got to 18 and the rules fell away, they couldn't understand why we couldn't control things. I had a lot of problems. I can remember having a conversation with them both when they were expecting that they could go off and do something, and I would just sort the media out and no one would hear about it and it would all be fine. I thought, actually, what have we done? That's not real life, we can't do that anymore. Sandy disagrees. Maybe we didn't get it right all the time, but I firmly believe that we had to come down on the media, hard and fast after Diana died. The boys needed to see we could protect them from intrusion, tittle-tattle. Being constantly in the papers for the slightest thing could have been embarrassing for those teenagers within their peer group. Seeing the privacy and respect now extended to the Duchess of Cambridge, I think we set the scene back then, and William and Harry were allowed to develop into the men they are today without having a paranoid fear or dislike of the media. For all that, not many intrusive photographs made it into the press during William's 4 years in Scotland. All his tutors agreed that being able to shop for groceries, have a pint in a pub, walk around the town and come and go like anyone else was a positive element for him at St. Andrews. The independence was probably the most important part of what he got out of the university. That, and meeting Catherine, of course. Forget the degree. The degree was probably somewhere quite low down the list. So while he started off more uncomfortable than a lot of kids who come to university on their own for the first time, once he got through that, into his second year maybe, he relaxed and began to really enjoy it. The consensus seems to be that he was comfortable when he could make an easy getaway but wasn't keen on confined spaces, of which the university library was one. Peter Humphrey wasn't the only one who felt William didn't spend enough time in the library. His explanation: "It's one thing to walk around the place but quite another to sit somewhere where you can be immediately surrounded by the curious." William did agree to go on a field trip to Dundee. It was a first-year human geography trip to look at urban activity, and see how it is separated into different zones. "It's an interesting place," says John. "It used to have a bad reputation, but parts of it have improved dramatically in the last 10 or 12 years, although it's still got some colorful spots." William was amongst a group of students that went to the colorful spots. They were huddled in a group discussing some low-quality housing, when someone in a flat 3 floors above threw open the window and, in the broadest of accents, told the group, including the future king, to go F*** themselves.